This is the part you hear about. Bring a flashlight, it's dark. It's just as creepy as you could imagine.
Was I scared? No. Yeah, a little bit.
Climbed over mountains through rocky roads. I will forge my name on down the west coast. Kisses from kingsmen and diaries from dames. I will forge my name, you'll never be the same. So bring on the flames. Oh, bring on the flames. Bring on the flames. Oh, bring on the flames. Though you beat me with your wicked words and smiles, I'll make it worth your while.
I love to adventure, and the filmmaking and the photography allow me to capture those moments and helps for me to share it with other people. My name's Dan Redfield, and these are my photo ventures. My friend Kyle was out there fishing, and he had offered us a private water taxi to shuttle us from Lowell Point to our cabin at Derby Cove. I had asked Kristen the night before, are you comfortable with loading on to a boat from a kayak?
Well, it's kind of like getting, from a kayak to a dock, kind of.
As we're paddling closer and closer towards the boat, I could just feel the anxiety pouring off of her, and we got to the boat, and I don't think she was super excited.
I was a little stressed, had everything on me, car keys, phones, everything was in this kayak. I think we moved the backpacks first, anything, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be the first one off. 4 guys on the boat, plus Dan, trying to pull up this kayak onto this boat, which I thought was probably longer than the boat.
Headed out to Derby Cove, cut our time significantly, and that just left more time for us to explore.
I got the kayak back in the water. I made Dan get in first, just in case, his weight was with this side or the other side. I didn't want to be in there for that, so I was the last one in. Gorgeous cabin. There's a waterfall right next to it, picnic table out front, just probably one of the prettiest little spots. I was excited to call that home for the next day.
I'm sorry if that's your secret spot and I'm giving away top secret information. But the good thing for you is I don't really think anybody's watching this.
We decided to go check out the World War II fort, which is kind of what Caines Head is known for. It was about a 2.5-mile hike. Hiking for me, you can kind of reset. It gets you out of just your everyday wake up, work, whatever's going on. Where we grew up in Kenai, there wasn't a lot of mountains. Seward has some gorgeous hikes, and this is definitely a top one. You really start appreciating the mountains and loving the mountains, and they are home. Definitely don't take it for granted. You pass through a couple beaches on the way. One of them, North Beach, had the remains of this old pier.
North Beach is home to the old U.S. Army pier. Boats would come in, dock, unload supplies and gear, and ship it up to the fort. It was built in 1941. This thing was built in such a way that it survived the 1964 Good Friday earthquake and tsunami. When the dismantling of the fort began, upkeep on the pier no longer happened. As time went by and the waves started crashing, it slowly started to deteriorate. The second we showed up, the birds started coming in and they knew we had food. They kind of jumped us a little bit. Fort McGillivray was important during World War II because it acted as a lookout and strategic defense. The port of Seward was a huge export location. Caines Head offered a really great vantage point for any Japanese ships coming in trying to make an attack on the port of Seward. It's perched up 650 feet off the sea level, and it gives you just a great vantage point of the harbor and also the small choke point that comes into that Resurrection Bay. Originally, there were a pair of 155 millimeter guns that were attached. In 1943, these guns were replaced by 6-inch guns, which were way more accurate and effective up to 16 miles. At the end, they were never actually fired.
We explored a little more and we started realizing how many structures were up there and how it's not just one bunker.
About $8 million went into the construction of the fort. The fort had 7 miles worth of roadway, 5 barracks, 1 quarters office, and a mess hall.
A lot of work went into this place, so it was pretty cool to see that piece of history. This is the part you hear about. Bring a flashlight, it's dark. It's just as creepy as you could imagine a 70-year-old bunker to be with, overgrown trees and no light and no one around, and the list goes on and on. Here's this door, like this big dark dungeon door, and it was just slightly open. Not super inviting. Was gonna humor him a little bit, and I did want to check it out. After you.
Kristen didn't last very long. She took a peek into 2 rooms, and by the time I turned around, there wasn't anything left but a vapor trail. You don't want to go further? Are you going back outside?
Maybe. Yeah, I'm done. I'll wait for you outside in the sun.
Kind of deep within this fort and kind of expecting like the Blair Witch to come popping out. I had a tendency of turning my camera light very slowly because I felt like if I turned it real quickly, the Blair Witch would show up. Was I scared? No. Nah, bro, I ain't scared. It's definitely kind of eerie. Super cool, but definitely eerie. What was that? Okay, yeah. Yeah, a little bit. So it was pretty creepy in there, babe.
I knew that the sun would drop behind the mountain, so I didn't want to hike past dark. We hiked back to the cabin, and Dan wanted to catch the last bit of sunlight as it was setting over the giant pier.
When I'm out on these photo ventures, physically and mentally just moving a million miles an hour. I've got to cover all my shots through B-roll. I've also got to narrate this. I've got to find out what my next shots are going to be. I also have to get pictures, and I really just wanted this tiny little section just to focus on pictures. One of the coolest features out there was the pier. I'm always looking for adding depth into the composition. If you can get a good foreground, midground, background, then you're doing something right. We've got the midground being our pier. The background will hopefully be the mountains with some great light on it. So we just need to find something in the foreground. I also love framing my subject with foreground elements. I think it just adds another level of dimension in the picture. All those little things help deliver to your audience the information that you want them to know. You want to give them a sense of place. Because the water's kind of choppy, I'll put it on an ND filter and roll the shutter a couple seconds to kind of smooth out the water a little bit. I don't want your eye to be distracted by the texture in the water. I finally set on this old beechwood that had this rope connected to it. I ended up taking the rope, flinging it around the beechwood a little bit to kind of help draw your eye from the rope to the subject in the midground. I was also focus stacking the midground, background, and the foreground, and then in post, combine all those together. Everything's in focus. You're able to digest everything that's in the frame. Each picture was just better than the last one. It just kept getting better and better and better, and there was nothing that could really pry me away from this scene except for the falling light. And finally, the light faded, and it was time to pack it up and go home. But I returned home with some images that I was pretty proud with. I'm exhausted, so I need to go in there, recharge my batteries, camera batteries. So we'll hit it again tomorrow hard. But I'm exhausted, man. Woo.
addicted to the rush. We run through the city, anything to feel alive. Cause there's something missing, we keep searching through the night. It's running through our blood, this helpless search for love.
Packed up the kayak, knew we'd have our 4-mile kayak ride back. I was really excited about the kayaking and another gorgeous day.
We had great water. The water was fine, the weather was perfect, everything, all the stars aligned, and just started making our way back to Lowell Point. Stopped off at one of the beaches, got out, explored the area there.
Given the fact we hadn't seen anybody for almost a day, it was pretty awesome.
There were still salmon that were still spawning, trying to make their way upstream. It was an area that didn't even look like Alaska.
It reminded me of Oregon, just all the green, the lush, the big trees, the branches, it was gorgeous. Caines Head, highly recommend this place. It has been on my list to visit for quite a while now. Seward doesn't get any better. I think it's probably one of the prettiest places in Alaska.
Outside of just being a great episode, it was really awesome to be able to spend 2 days with Kristen, and we got to adventure. I'm super lucky that she's an adventurer too. It's something that we both get to share.
Smile for Daddy. You see Dad? Say hi.
You know, is there anybody?
Yeah, he came running out, just wet, white, face.
Was I scared in the fort? Nah, bro, I ain't scared. I peed my pants for some other reason. And hopefully get the mountains in the background with the light on it. Hey, water, can you shut up for 2 seconds? I'm trying to do an interview. Wait for wind, holding for wind. Man, it's windy out here. Now, I told Kristen we're gonna have to load onto the boat from the kayak. To say that she's a little bit bummed would be a bit of an understatement. She's probably calling a water taxi right now to come pick her up and go home. Five skipper.